This is the Scottish Parliament petitions site, which they changed a while ago. Notice here, right, on the search, one of the first things that stands out to me about this website, when you go onto it, right, on the front of it, is that they've got this thing here saying enter keyword, right, to search through the petitions. Now, they've got this search through the petitions option, right, on the first main part of it, on the first main page. Now, what's ironic about that is it stands out, it's prominent, it says enter keyword. Now, I find this extremely patronising because it's a keyword, a word which is key and opens a lock and gets your point across. It's keywords which transfer the knowledge and understanding to a person so they click and they understand what you're trying to say or the point that you're trying to make. They're revelation, they're revelatory, right? Or enlightening, so to say. And the UK Parliament, the British Parliament in their petitions committee, it is petitions which have clever words or when you make a point, which they're rejecting because they don't like the point you're making or the thing that you're trying to prove, right? So, ironically, it's keywords which they're using as an excuse to reject petitions, right? But they're claiming, it's standards, it doesn't meet the standards. It usually doesn't meet the standards because you've used a particular keyword which makes a very strong or pertinent point, right? Or explains something, right? Or even prove something. And by rejecting those petitions, it's just like kind of rounding off the end of a knife, really. Not that you're trying to cause damage or anything, but, the end of a knife is called a point, to make a point, right? And I'm finding that it's these key points, call them key points, which is what is missing from a lot of the things that the government are doing illegally at the moment, like with the election law, right? It's a key point on the Representation of the People Act, on the law that's been broken. It's a key point that people don't even know or are ignoring with Reform UK and also with the Welsh Parliament now, with this Baroness Morgan Ely, who is stood in an election. She's got herself a seat in the Senedd, in the Welsh Parliament, and yet she hasn't fully renounced her title, which you have to do by law. There is a case for this Viscount Standgate's case, a test case, and an act of law for it, the Peerage Act 1963. It applies to Scottish Parliament, English Parliament, and the Welsh. In fact, the Welsh Parliament was only made just after the Act was updated, or just before the Act was updated. It does apply to the peerage of Wales, Scotland, and England, and respective parliaments. That's another point. It's a point of law on a legal point, and these people are breaking all these laws now, and they're either oblivious to these acts of law or they just don't care, they're ignoring them, that they're barging through, which means that they don't, but they're wanting to get law put through government and do government, but they're not doing government, they're doing what laws they want to acknowledge and put through. They're not actually engaging or participating in legislation or the law. They're living a kind of ignorant fantasy life of only the things that they want to sort of pretend exist. They're living in an existence where they're pretending certain things don't exist because it gets in their way or stops them from doing certain things, right? But it's blatantly obvious. And they're complaining about other people who aren't abiding by the law and saying, what are we going to do about crime? And another thing, the only way you can complain about these things now, more and more, they're setting up these non-departmental government agencies, right? Non-departmental, so it's not a government department, like Ofcom, the Advertising Standards Authority, things like that. And what I've realised this term is non-departmental government body, right? Really, YouTube and Facebook are non-departmental government bodies. They might as well be, because the government are telling them what to do, and they're doing a lot of governance over us, but they're not a government department, right? Now, sure, it's not taxpayer owned, but more and more, they're starting to sell off these things. Like Royal Mail. Royal Mail was a government body, right? In a way, Royal Mail has really been a department of government, although it didn't have a proper department as such, but it was a government body, and they kind of sold that off, right? So, but it was needed for the function of the country. Now, that's an example where they have sold it off, and now it's maybe privately owned, and they're putting the prices up and no one can afford it, right? When they were all public assets, all the post boxes. And, you know, so Royal Mail might as well be like Facebook or YouTube now. You know, it used to be, it's governing all the mail, you know, that gets sent and can be sent and so forth, but you got to pay for it, right? And these big platforms are taking down our media when it's all protected in law. It's completely and totally protected in law. And particularly when you've got evidence on there, when you want to prove something, right? YouTube and Facebook taking evidence from us is almost worse than the petitions committee rejecting petitions, right? Or not letting you share them when you've got important evidence which you can hold the government to account or get public support to make them act on it. Surgery with the MP is the main way that people, you know, are meant to meet with their MP and government to get certain legislation put through. That's the whole point. We're not meant to just vote for MPs and then just let government do what it wants with political parties. The whole point in surgery is to meet with MPs, and they're meant to go and represent what the people care about and are interested in, right? Petitions is not meant to really be for, you know, acts of law and things like that, really, because it's through the normal surgery and contacting MPs and requests. Petitions is actually supposed to be over a specific grievance or complaint, something that is being either done wrong to you or the government is not doing right. And that's really holding the government to account, particularly with numbers of signatures, because when you've got a number of signatures, you've got a body, and when people know about it, you raise awareness of it, and the more people that know about it and the more people sign to it is more reason that's going to make the government act. If they can stop people from knowing about it or not get people officially subscribing and signed to it, then there's less incentive for them to act, right? And by not allowing us to share the petitions when we have a legal right to share them before we submit it or before it's officially submitted, they're obstructing the process dramatically. And you can't get the point across. It's the point, really, and the weight of signatures on the point which forces them to act, really. And, you know, rightly so if they're not doing something right, if they're doing something wrong. But we're being obstructed from that. And, you know, there are so many people now with a complaint. I don't feel like my complaints are getting acted on. Other people are so deeply focused on their own complaints to the government or just general dissatisfaction, which is a bit more diffused. Like, you know, there are huge groups now opposing the government on issues like, you know, ULEZ or 20 mile an hour or other things. But even though everyone in the groups is generally behind a particular cause, they're not getting these points, these keywords, these key things through, or getting everyone completely and totally behind it to get it actioned. And it just, you know, it goes on and on and on and on, and you don't get the problem solved. And every faculty which could hit the nail on the head, right, with real, true, honest evidence and a point, with the weight of the public on it, is blocked. They've blunted it off, which is basically the petitions committee. And we are being obstructed. And I really don't know what's taken these MPs now. They either are doing it on purpose and they're just sabotaging the country and wrecking it, and they've got no disregard, they've got no regard for the law at all. They've got complete disregard for the law. Or they just have absolutely no idea about legislation. They're completely ignorant about, important legislation, which even says that they might not even be allowed to be there in the first place, or they can't be there in the first place. And as for the Petitions Committee, from 1688 onwards, the 1661 Act was always regarded as, questionable, right? Until 1985, 86, right? Even Herbert Broom talks about this, that, after the 1688 Bill of Rights, right to petition, that the 1661 Act was kind of, conspicuous, even if it was lawful in the first place, because it's a parliamentary process anyway, right? And after 1986, you don't need permission to share petitions. It's complete and total freedom to do it before you submit it. And even before 1986, if people were abiding by the Tumultuous Petitioning Act, you could get a jury to authorise it, right? The public could give consent. Now, that is not 4 or however many unelected persons working in the Petitions Committee they're not elected. One thing about Parliament throughout all history is that when you submit petitions, you're submitting them to the MPs, right? And the MPs decide whether they're going to accept it or not. Elect people who you voted into Parliament, right? The clerk plays a role, advisory role, but ultimately the Speaker and MPs, right? Now, these 4 persons they've got on the Petitions Committee, these, it was Sean Harris was one of them, but I don't know who's on there now. It's only been there since 2010. It's relatively new still, although that's 25 years have gone. But I came across it in 2013, and it had only been going for 3 years. And 2006 is, not that far back. These people are on a hell of a lot of money. They could be on up to £900 a week, and they go through petitions very slow. They're rejecting anything that is worth doing. Anything that has any point to it or is worth even submitting, they're rejecting it, right? And it is out of the order of proceedings. It's not in order of proceedings. Then these people, that we didn't elect them. We didn't elect these people. They haven't been elected by the public. They don't have any right to reject or accept any petition because we did not elect them. It's the MPs, and they're asking government departments for advice on particular law or whether a petition can be accepted or not. Government, civil servants, bureaucrats, non-elected staff of the government, right, have absolutely no right whatsoever, right, to make any judicial decision, which is what it is, right, on any petition. None. They're not elected, right? They're not. It's not the House of Commons. They're not elected MPs, and Tony Blair was doing it illegally as well. This is as bad as the illegal Attorney General position, right? They're undermining every single thing which this government is and stood for, and they're lying. However corrupt Tony Blair was and whatever things he did wrong, like setting the justices against their oath, for example, by creating deals for justice, Keir Starmer is 10 times worse than Tony Blair. They've got peers in the Senate. They've got barons as Attorney Generals. Keir Starmer never acknowledged privileges once in his career in the CPS, not for political activities. They're breaking laws themselves when they're wanting to try and get us to comply with the law. Then they're not following the rules. Keir Starmer is part of an anarchist movement, and if MI5 can't see that, well, they're part of it as well. The security services should really be doing something about this, but all they're bothered about is, wanting to get their systems, equipment, goodies, tech into place and software. That's what they're pushing for, and that's what they're lobbying for. They weren't elected, right? And, it's departments like that this petitions committee are going for advice for, right? It's completely corrupt in Parliament, and I don't know how Jamie Stone, who conveys himself as a plain gentleman, plain honourable gentleman, can take that petitions committee seriously. He's breaking every rule in the book, and I don't think that people are submitting petitions that swear or use abusive language. They're merely trying to prove a point. And if it isn't something the government would do, why would people sign it? Why would loads of people sign the petition? There are lots of popular petitions that many people would want to get behind and sign, and they would agree that it's something the government can do, but we're being obstructed and rejected, right? And time's ticking. People's lives are passing by, and nothing is getting done about it. The petitions committee I think it's the cause of all the problems in the streets and all the protests with Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, because they're just rejecting them all and not letting us share them, because they don't really want people to be informed. They don't want people to be presented with evidence and make judgments, which is what you're doing when you draft the petition and then share it. It's your evidence, you're proving a case, and you've got to try and prove it to the public and to get them to sign it in order to put pressure on MPs to act on it, whether the public believe it or not. And MPs are saying, no, it's whether we believe it or not the public, when the proper procedure for a petition was to have it in front of a jury, right? After 1661, up till 1986, which is a long period of time. A jury could decide on it. The public could decide on it in a court, right? To make it official, right? Not unelected people who we don't really know who they are, and definitely not departmental government people. The electors, right? The randomly selected electors who aren't biased like these partisan planted people in the petitions committee, and departmental government persons who departmental government persons are not allowed to. They can't engage in justice. The petition is a judicial system. The petition is a judicial system of justice, right? Because it involves, it's judicial decisions, right? Government departments cannot get involved in that. Elected MPs, members can, and the committee, but not these other staff who are meant to be busybodying on it and asking advice from the government. When you get enough signatures, right, and the government have to debate it, then they go seek advice on or they can themselves go look into evidence and so forth, and it will be judged. The court session is meant to be the committee, and what they're doing is exactly like what Dominic Cummings said when he said that, they're not allowing anything to be said or voiced or spoken whatsoever off script in any committee meeting. It's all scripted and prearranged, right? And that is the standard, what they're doing with petitions. They don't want to allow any information which is challenging against them, holding them to accountability, right, or responsibility. And if we're wrong, if you make a false claim and it's not right, then what have they got to be scared of if it's not true, right? And they can put a statement out and say that it's not true and point to, the information which proves that. They don't need to block you or obstruct you. They shouldn't have started the petitions committee if they didn't want to allow people their legal right and entitlement to share it. There is no tumultuous petitioning act. You don't need any consent to collect the signatures, but now they're making you get consent, and they're listing it and putting it as officially rejected, right? which even if it's listed on the website, it is, they're saying we're rejecting this. And the ones that don't even appear on there at all, it's effectively the same as screwing it up and putting it in the bin, right? Or they're not even returning them back to you, right? Something must be done about this petitions committee. It really is outrageous what they're doing to us, and it's the cause of all the problems. And there'd be a lot more pressure on them to act and do things if there were more petitions up there which were challenging them more, because they're meant to, it's meant to be there to resolve grievances, but not merely. There are complaints departments. Why don't you complain to the Advertising Standards Authority, or to the Ofcom, or complain to the Ombudsman, or whatever. This is the thing, right? You can contact the council and they've got a monitoring officer, right? You can complain about a councillor to the monitoring officer, right? That's a complaint, right? But the thing is, usually it's one person, right? And with petitions, it's like group litigation, and you've got a legal right, right? What you're doing is, it's like group litigation because there's strength in numbers. Group litigation is good because all of the group might have been affected, or they might not be able to afford the litigation unless they come together as a group to afford it, right? Now, this is the thing. When you are a petitioner, the whole point in the signature process is you've got a claim, or you've found out something, that the government aren't doing right, or something that's been done wrong, right? And you are getting people to support you in that. I will stand with you, right? And you are telling them about it, and you are informing them of it and educating them of it, and they choose to join you and form a body, right? And this body grows, and more people become aware of the problem, and then there is more weight of pressure for the government to do something about it. It is a form of group litigation at the highest level against Parliament, because Parliament is not held to account in the courts or tribunals, right? Because they can't be judged anywhere at Parliament. So it is group litigation to Parliament. That's what it is. And what they're doing is that when you submit something which, is substantial, that's your claim, right? They're not actually allowing you to have a group litigation. They're only allowing you to have a small group litigation of 5 to 20 people. They say, no, you can't have group litigation of more than 20 people, right? Because we don't think you're right. But it's not actually the MPs. What it is 4 or more unknown persons who are on £900 a week, who we didn't vote for and we didn't elect. They're not judges, right? They're not magistrates. And they're asking non-elected government departments, people who might be pro-Labour or Conservative, right? Bureaucrats, right? Who's got no business of the House of Commons at all. They haven't been elected into the Commons. People who HM Revenue and Customs, only the Secretary of State. Each government department has, members of the Lords or, chief executive. They weren't elected. They're not a member of the House of Commons. Only the Secretary of State is in the Department of Government, or a member of the Lords, right? They're not elected. We didn't vote for them. They've got no legal right at all whatsoever to make any judicial decisions on petitions at all whatsoever. None. Neither have those petitions committee members. None. We're being completely and utterly scammed, and it's pure criminality. We have the legal right to actually a jury selected at random to decide whether that petition, and that's other members of the public. It means you've got to convince other members of the public, not selected, right? These petitions committee staff members, right? I don't know who they are. I only know who Sean Harris was. I don't know any other name. I know Gareth Price. 2 names. He's in the Senate. Gareth Price, Sean Harris, right? Now, those people, right, They're anonymous to most people. They're not elected. We don't know what their opinions or biases are. And they're there permanently. And we don't get to choose who they are, right? 2 MPs, the chairman of the Petitions Committee and the leader of the House of Lords, right? And the leader of the House of Lords is Labour. She doesn't withdraw from a party like the Speaker, right? Now, when a petition is assessed of whether it should be shared to the wider public, whether it's good to share it, a jury in a court under the 1661 Act is selected at random from the public, completely randomly selected from the public, right, to check it and approve it, right? Now, I want Jamie Stone, right, to show me where the equivalent of that right is in this current Petitions Committee policy with these 4 staff members. It isn't. It is a controlled. It's not judicial, but they're conveying themselves judicially, but they're not judges. They're not magistrates. They weren't voted in or elected. I don't even think they've taken an oath, right? Who are these people? These people in that Petitions Committee, right? I want them removed as soon as possible, right? They have no right in this country to decide sweet F.A. about anything I set in writing. Nothing. They are not a judge. They haven't taken a judicial oath. They haven't been elected. I don't know who they are, right? And it's not, at least Charles I, right? Or Charles II, sorry, even. At least Charles II had a random jury to be selected, right? In a proper court, that's judicial. We're not even getting what Charles II gave us for if we were allowed to share it or not. It's absolutely and completely pure partisan control. And it's been, how long's passed since 2013? It's contempt. We are all being held at a ransom. It's terrorism, right? And what happens? It all floods onto the streets, and people kick off on the streets because they don't want to publish it, right? If a jury says that it's good to be shared, right? It's good to be shared, right? And how could Parliament, reject it when it had been approved by a jury, to be shared widely? Because, this is the thing. If we don't get some fair, honest processing, which is for the people, by the people, right, we got problems. I cannot accept the conduct of these persons checking these petitions. They lie. They lie. They don't know the law. And even if, something you submit's not correct, not everything, people bring court cases every day of the week, right? And not everything that's submitted is correct. It's to be decided by the jury. If it's correct, you've got to convince them, right? But that's the MPs in the debate, not some non-elected staff members. I am not convincing them of anything at all. I don't have to prove anything to those people. They are not a magistrate. They have not taken a judicial oath. They have not been elected, and they effectively are in a legal obstruction, a perversion of the course of justice, and a abuse of process. The Petitions Committee is an abuse of process, of parliamentary process, how it's set up now. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and something needs to be done about it. And this all came from the keyword thing. I'm going to challenge the Scottish Government on this peerage issue, because I don't know how many. I'm guessing the Scottish Government have probably broken this peerage rule as well, besides the Welsh Government, because that Viscount Stangate's case has been completely undermined.